Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the channel. It's Cynicalex, and today we're talking about a bunch of stuff. Some stuff that I've had on my mind. I just got back from my trip, guys. I'm really glad to be back and to be able to make videos for you guys that are topical and kind of going with the flow of what everyone's talking about and what everyone's thinking and how the game is feeling and progressing. I apologize in advance if I sound like I'm sick, because I think I am kind of a little bit sick, but it's nothing too serious, so don't worry about it if any of you are. But, you know, it does bring up an interesting fact for me, or an interesting point, because, you know, although I do need to make pre-recorded videos and I need to pre-upload a few days in advance when I do take trips or when I do have some kinds of engagements, I always get this feeling if I've uploaded anything more than 2 or 3 days worth of content in advance, I get this feeling that I'm just disconnected from you guys and disconnected from chat and from the comment section and from the general kind of pulse. Thank you for the Dimension Rift, Lionel Hutz. The general pulse of, you know, all the subs and all the bros, all the debris boys. So, you know, I'm just happy to be doing this again on such a tight schedule, guys. Some like it tight, as they say. So what do I want to talk about? Well, I've been looking at the game and thinking about how all of the game modes can be basically classified into one of 2.5 categories. There's competitive or meta encouraging categories. There's casual but uncontrollably meta categories, and then there's super casual, and this is kind of like a niche category. But let's take a look a little bit closer at what I'm saying so we can try to unpack some of my thoughts here. So we have Alliance Tournaments, ultra competitive mode. This is probably the most competitive mode we have in the game right now. Unfortunately, it only allows for the top 16, but that's kind of what makes it super competitive. We have Alliance Battle, which even among, you know, the top 100, it is quite competitive. Within your own alliance, it's very competitive if you are in that, you know, top 100, top 50 spot, competing with your friends. Shadowlands is very competitive. After floor 10, it gets quite difficult. People build strategies for it. The Shadowlands King of the Hill is very competitive. The rush to be the first person to clear Shadowland for the week when it first opens is also ultra competitive. Some people put up dummy teams, but for the most part, people take the King of the Hill very, very seriously. And then World Boss. Now, World Boss is not necessarily PvP, or it's not necessarily competitive. It used to be competitive when we had people who couldn't clear, or when most of the people in the game couldn't clear to the target count, and so there was a huge competition to be the first to kind of crack the Infinity Thanos code. But it is competitive in the sense that you do need meta characters to compete well in Battle World. The other game modes, you know, Timeline Battle, Co-op, World Boss Invasion, Battle World, Villain Siege, those kinds of story modes, special mode, daily missions, Shadowlands before floor 10, those are really not so competitive. Those are where you can kind of experiment more and get away with it. You don't get punished by deviating from the meta that much. I mean, obviously people still struggle with Shadowlands at the beginning, so I don't want to make it sound like Shadowlands is easy. I'm not saying that because it's not competitive, it's not easy, but there's just a different way that you approach playing that game, and a different play style that you approach it with, or at least that I do, and that you go about trying to win in. I mean, Shadowland in general is a fight against yourself. How well can you do? But the first 10 floors, you can kind of be a little bit more casual about your decisions. But if you want to really get to the top, if you want to crack 25 floors, after floor 10, you have to really start budgeting your characters and getting into the nitty-gritty. So it gets a lot more internally competitive, or self-competitive, I guess, if that's even a term. So we have these kind of conflicting or opposite end spectrum game modes. You have some game modes that are super competitive, really encourage you to min-max all of your characters and all of their setups. And then you have modes where you can kind of just, you know, run through the daisies. Co-op being a perfect example. This is just like your basic grind dungeon. And that's all well and good. I'm not saying that any of these game modes are bad. I'm not saying that we shouldn't have the competitive side. I'm not saying that we shouldn't have the casual side. You need this balance in order to make the game appealing, because at the beginning, a lot of players jump into this game and they're not inherently competitive. Some gamers are inherently competitive at all video games, but most gamers just want to have an enjoyable experience on a semi-casual, semi-competitive level. but most of the competitive nature is internal. You're competing with yourself. How far can I go to be free to play? How far can I go with just this one favorite character of mine? People build up their own expectations and their own reward systems in their head, you know? But then as the game progresses and as you get more heavily invested in the game, then you start to want to see more of a return for your investment. You think to yourself, oh, hey, I've invested a year of my life in this game. How well do I really match up with the big boys? You know, I've been playing this game since day one. My rank is only, what, 1984? That was a great year. But shit, I want my rank to be higher. You know what? I'm gonna tweak my timeline battle team and try to push for the top 1,000. I don't know, but you can kind of see the logic there. So I think that all of these game modes do require or are necessary, and I do want them all in the game. I don't want that to be misunderstood. But what I do want to shed some light on, and it might sound a little bit bizarre because I have trashed this game mode or said that it's boring in the past, but I do want to shed some light on Villain Siege. And this all started, guys, this whole conversation started in my head because I thought about Villain Siege, and I thought about what Villain Siege used to be. Villain Siege for me used to be so much fun because it rewarded me with intelligent gameplay and it rewarded the mechanics of the game. If I could dodge the environmental hazards while still doing damage on a 2-minute clock, it was this frantic push for supremacy. And I think in a lot of ways it's interesting because it's not really so much a check of your damage. I mean, it is in a way, but it's also whether or not you can adhere to and play by the rules set out for you in the game mode, in the little arena, whether it's Kingpin's hazards or it's these other guys' hazards. And the fact that they introduced new Villain Sieges pretty frequently and they kept it fresh means that you're constantly having to evolve your strategy for who you bring in to try to take down these bosses. So part of me really wishes that they would just completely revamp or just up the difficulty of Villain Siege, or maybe just the last stage if you want to keep the first two stages normal, and make the bosses rotate on a more routine schedule and make those hazards just super punishing. Like, you step in that lava pit, that's 10,000 damage. Boom, you just lost half your health. And really reward players for manual play and for executing their skills effectively and coordinating their movements, just to reward that kind of gameplay, because I think that's one of the most fun features that this game has. Despite the fact that I've wanted PvP for so long, I don't know if they're ever going to succeed in making it a reality and making it fun and making it competitive and not broken and not unbalanced. So in spite of that, or despite the fact that we may never get it, I would like to at least see something like this manifest itself in some way. As much as I do really enjoy World Boss, in a lot of ways, World Boss is just a DPS check. It's just, can you do enough damage? Yes, then you got it. Can you do enough damage while kind of surviving? Yes, but a lot of World Boss just ends up being face roll. And yes, you can face roll through Villain Siege now, just given how powerful your characters are, but that's not the point of Villain Siege. It's not just the boss that you're dealing with, it's these other things. And that's why I do also really like Shadowland. And despite the fact that the enemies will punish you, it's the hazards that will punish you a lot of the time more so, or at least as much as. So the hazards in Shadowland aren't lasers, they're the requirements, the energy reflect, the physical reflect, the rumbles, the pot, all of those things, you know, increase dodge rate, increase crit rate, whatever it is that the bosses have. There's more bosses, they have minions that come along with them to try and annoy you. There's waves, 1 or 2 or 3 waves. They have immunity, fire immunity, whatever, lightning immunity. It's those kinds of extra added on features or added on restrictions or requirements or hazards that really make it fresh and keep it fun and keep it rewarding. You have to play smart. Aside from learning the patterns of the bosses, as far as like, at this stage they're going to do this attack, and at that stage they're going to do that attack, which is an intelligent game decision and design decision. I'm not knocking World Boss, but once you get that down, there's really nothing else to the World Bosses. The only stage that has any kind of trick or clue behind it is Corvus' stage, because of you need the dodge ignore, otherwise the last stage becomes incredibly difficult. All of the other World Bosses do not have that, and it's basically just a slight pattern game and a DPS check. And I think that if we had more game modes that were similar to Villain Siege, that were similar to Shadowlands, it doesn't even have to be a game mode. They can augment existing game modes to reflect this refinement, or to reflect the enhancement of this feature. You know, co-op would be a lot more fun if there were actually real punishable environmental hazards. I know a lot of you wouldn't like me for saying that because it means you might lose or die while playing co-op, but it would make it a lot more interesting. You know, the reason why World Boss Invasion is still interesting to people, despite the fact that you disconnect, you get idiots to play with, and you have to struggle against these ridiculous requirements on some days, is because the mechanics are really fun. Yes, the bosses are fun. Yes, it's fun to play with other people, but it's more fun to play things like the HP shared mode, where your mistakes will punish your teammates. It's fun to play the 50% HP mode. I know you guys hate that mode, and I hate it too, but it's still fun to watch that meter go back and forth. It's the novelty of it, and it's the fact that it's still fresh, despite the fact that it's basically just one of a few. Because you switch around the bosses, you switch around the days, you mess around with the templates and the arenas, and it becomes a whole new experience. So I hope my rambling hasn't been too incoherent, guys. I wanted to bring up this topic, and I wanted it to be kind of free form, and I didn't want to stick to a script or anything like that, but I know that I may have sounded a bit here and there and kind of helter-skelter about it, so please be kind, be patient to my frail mind, guys. And of course, if you like what you see, I hope to see you again tomorrow. Take care.